All right, everybody, welcome back. It's been a while, been a couple weeks, couple months, but we're back today. We're going to talk about the transfer window around the world of the soccer ball. Are we today? I have a Nick McGrath.
Hello.
Seth.
I not give an introduction.
I just said I just said
I'm
we
also
have
here.
That Brock, you'd be like, no.
I'm also here.
All right. So we'll just get right into it, all right? We start in England, the Premier League, or like any of the leagues for that fact. I don't think we're going to be talking about championship or anything like that, but any league is up there. So I'm going to go to Seth first. Who do you think had the best transfer window?
I think the easy answer would be to go with Chelsea. They've signed two of the most wanted young players in Europe and got them both for fees under 100 million, which I know there was a lot of talk about Havertz being this, 120 million euro valued player or whatever. But I think Chelsea managed to get some fees out of Leipzig and out of Leverkusen that were actually kind of favorable to them since they had the transfer embargo during one of the previous windows. It, I guess, allowed them to be a little bit more adventurous in not only the quality of player they signed, but the amount of players they signed, because really the only signings they had made before that were Christian Pulisic, signing Mateo Kovacic on a permanent, and getting quite a few people back from loan, but also sending a lot of people on loan. So they had, I guess, balanced the books pretty well. In addition to that, you have the Eden Hazard sale to Real Madrid that also brought in a lot of money. So I think the easy answer is Chelsea. They managed to bring in someone who I think was probably one of the players of last season in Thiago Silva. I mean, he was just like heroic at many points for PSG despite his age, and I think kind of left on a strange note. I thought he would have finished his career there because PSG are known for paying players so much. I thought he would have just ended his time there, but I guess they just couldn't come to an agreement, and I think Chelsea is a good landing spot for him because we've seen not only how bad Kepa is, but how bad that defense has been at letting easy opportunities in on Kepa's net, which then makes his bad performances in certain games look even worse. So I think having a true leader back there, someone who's incredibly dominant in the air, will be helpful. And adding to the experience of Azpilicueta, and I guess you could even say Marcus Alonso, is something that is definitely valuable to that team. So I would probably go with Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree with pretty much everything you said. I think the benefit of just having Thiago Silva in is that you kind of have like a proven leader in that back line. I mean, he looked like a joke against West Brom a couple weeks ago, but I mean, like as he beds in, and as a lot of these signings bed in, Chelsea really are going to look fantastic. The fact that they got Timo Werner from everybody who was interested in him, and perfect striker. As much as I love Tammy Abraham, I don't think he's nowhere near as good as Timo Werner. That's just a fact. So I mean, their attack looks spectacular, and they've had some teething issues. As we've seen, Frank Lampard has, chopped and changed the formation. But once they get, Ziyech, Havertz, Werner, and Pulisic all playing together, I think that's going to be something really special. I mean, I don't know how he's going to do that because I don't think for some reason between England and Chelsea, Mason Mount is undroppable. But again, like this, it's a really great looking window. Again, I think they should have probably addressed their defensive issues a little bit more. Edouard Mendy is a decent keeper. There's not much we can say about him, not much anyone can say about him, aside from the fact that he is massive. But it's better than Kepa. Anything was better than Kepa last season. And I mean, you look at Chilwell. Chilwell could probably be one of the better left backs in the league. The issue is that he's very attacking, and you probably wanted someone who is a little bit more defensive, because that was probably the big issue from that position was the defensive frailty. Again, like it's just an issue with the defense. But I think the midfield looks sorted. I think probably in a couple of windows, either next summer or in January, they're going to try again for Declan Rice. So I don't know. Chelsea look promising. But one of my, I think probably the best window for me in the Premier League in terms of what they needed to do was, unfortunately for my taste, was Aston Villa. And again, I get so much egg on my face now for pooping on Aston Villa because I mean it was the last episode. What did we spend 10 minutes just ripping on them, and they turn around and have one of the best problem-solving windows of the summer. I mean, they got Ollie Watkins in, Bertrand Traore, so there's depth and there's actually a lot more pace and creativity in that attack. Ollie Watkins is going to solve a lot of problems. We already saw it with the goals against Liverpool. I mean, I don't think that Liverpool result is indicative of what they're going to be this season. It's a freak result, but it showed that they are going to be a lot better than last season defensively. They look so much better. They brought in Matty Cash on the right. And Konsa and Ming, since post-lockdown, they've actually looked a lot better. And Ross Barkley in the middle of the park. So I think they've just kind of addressed all the little issues, and they filled out the squad really nicely. So I don't think Aston Villa are actually in the relegation, dogfight that we would have thought. So, I mean, I would love to give them the credit they deserve, much as it pains me.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely go along with that. I mean, I think Matty Cash was just waiting to get picked up by a team. There were quite a few sides that I think could have used a very dynamic and sort of in the mold of a modern fullback in the Premier League, and I think Aston Villa were the team that I would imagine needed a right back the most. I mean, we've seen Brighton have one of the most exciting right backs, and he came out of nowhere after the restart. And Tyreek Lamptey has set the league alight, and I would have put Brighton as one of the teams that needed a Matty Cash, but now they don't. So I think going to Aston Villa was a great move, and then also Southampton picking up Kyle Walker-Peters, I think was a decent move for them, but I think Matty Cash probably would have been a little bit better. It's a little bit more on par with Ryan Bertrand's level of deliveries. Yeah. I don't know if Kyle Walker-Peters is there yet, but I think he's a decent defender, and he can get forward and actually is quite good at stepping into midfield, which I think is something that's going to be important for Southampton. So, yeah, I mean, I would say Aston Villa picking up Ollie Watkins was massive. I mean, if Aston Villa were going to go with one of the exciting forwards from the championship season last year, I'm glad they went with Ollie Watkins, because to me, he was the most ready-made for the Premier League, especially the Aston Villa side, who had a lot of trouble getting goals and had a lot of trouble keeping their strikers fit. So Definitely. It's good that they're getting quality in the starting 11, and then their backups are decent enough to back up Ollie Watkins. But I mean, he's been a star so far.
Along with the biggest win of keeping Grealish.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The chance creation is going to be. I mean, it's going to be insane.
And keeping Douglas Luiz around was big as well.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so my pick, it was between Everton and Tottenham. So between those two, I'm going to pick Tottenham.
Of course you are.
This doesn't seem like a surprise to you guys,
right? Little Mourinho love coming from Rob here.
Mourinho love's about to come in right now. All right. So they built off what they started last year. Last year was a failure. We can all agree. We can all agree on Tottenham standards, it was a failure. Like every year is, right? But still, they don't get trophies. That's just a trophy itself. But they have a guy who gets trophies. It doesn't matter how he gets them, right? He gets them somehow. So they tried building a team for him, and they brought in Gareth Bale, which is a big one, but it's also a risky one. So this one will tell us with time, because Gareth Bale, of course, is finally free. He probably signed this contract with the freaking sign that says "I'm free, I'm free." He must be so happy that he's out of the shithole that's Real Madrid. And Matt Daughtry from Wolves was an interesting signing, I think. Bob has him as a right mid, but I think Wolves played him at a fullback sometimes, right? Right. So they have Matt Daughtry. that could help the fullback situation that they have there. Sergio Regulon, I don't know how to say his last name. Is it Regulon?
Reguilon.
He's coming in. I think he's coming back, right?
No,
So
no, no. Well, he came back from loan from Madrid. No. Came from Madrid's youth academy.
Right. All right. Carlos Vinicius from my boys, Benfica. This guy can back up Joe Hart. I was about to say Joe Hart. This guy can back up Harry Kane, and he can also fight for that spot. I mean, Vinicius last year, the first half, Vinicius with Benfica was so amazing, and towards the end of last year too, he was also very good. And today we got the big signing, Joe Rodon. Seth and I were talking before this. We have no idea who this kid is, but they signed him for $13 million. So let's see what he can do.
I love him.
Importantly, they got Joe Hart on a free transfer. That's the winner right there.
Perfect backup. No, I think they've had a fantastic window. Actually, I hadn't heard that Rodon had signed him, but he's actually a really, really solid defender, or has been for Swansea. I think probably Swansea fans will be pretty mad that they've lost him because he's been pretty reliable for him. I don't think he's going to come in and rip up trees, but pretty decent ball playing defender. So that's actually a really good move for them. Doherty and Reguilon solved that fullback problem perfectly. That's one of the best fullback pairings in the league by quite some distance. I mean, you've got they're now probably about 3 or 4 perfect fullback pairings in the league, and that's definitely one of them for me. I think Reguilon is going to rip up trees, absolutely tear down that left side. And they have a big squad now. They have a big squad. Yeah. Look at that midfield, Højbjerg coming in.
Insanity.
And Ndombele, Dele, if they can bring him back into the fold, Lo Celso, Sissoko, Winks. There are so many players all over there for Tottenham, which is good because they have so many games.
Yeah, they're going to need that depth. Mourinho's already complained about it. No surprise there, but
yeah, but I mean, he's got as big a squad as any in the league.
Yeah, there's no excuse now.
Yeah, and he's got. I mean, think of the attack now. I mean, everyone's talking about, we need backup to Kane. We need backup to Kane. Like you said, Vinicius will definitely provide that. I think they've gone out and they've done very, very well. I think back to Rodon. I mean, still really good play, and I think they've probably gone out and solved most of the issues within that squad. So, I will give credit to Mourinho and Daniel Levy for opening up the checkbook for once.
All right, honorable mentions before we get to the worst. I think Everton definitely deserve an honorable mention. I think if you just say James Rodriguez, that's all you need to really know. That's a win right there. It's insanity. And you look at how they start in the season; it's very good. But other than that, they picked up Alan Decore from Watford, then Robin Olsen for backup keeper, Ben Godfrey from Norwich for 30 mil, and I can't say this dude from Marseille, Inkanuku. I can't say that, but
yeah,
they have themselves a good one. They got exactly what they needed, and so far it's paying off. I mean, only time will tell if it finally does everything. But you guys got anything else for wins?
In theory, I would say that Sheffield United signed a lot of players that would have excited the average fan of the Premier League, but whether those players such as Max Lowe, Ethan Ampadu, Rhian Brewster, assuming that those players get playtime, I think those are good signings, but they've started the season really poorly, and in theory, that window looked very good. 1 goal. In theory, those signings have looked good. Ollie Burke, I think, needs a career revitalization. But yeah, I'm not sure how they're going to bet into the side because we saw that with Chris Wilder's team last year, they basically played the same 11 players the entire season until Sandaberga came. And then once Sandaberga was in, they played him in the midfield for the rest of the season. And then the same other 9 or 10 players. So, yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to work. I think I'm under the impression that they still have Lise Mousset.
Yep. And he was actually really good.
But he hasn't really played this season yet, I don't think.
No.
But yeah, I would say they had a good like FIFA career mode transfer window. whether it works in application, who knows? I would also give a quick shout out to Newcastle. I think Newcastle signed a Premier League veteran and someone who is consistently going to give you a 7 or 8 out of 10 in Jeff Hendrick. They signed Callum Wilson, who is basically in, I think, probably 3 out of his 4 seasons in the Premier League, has given at least 11 or 12 goals, which they needed after last season's performances from Joelinton. They got Andy Cole on a permanent, who I think could get them a couple goals off the bench. He's always going to be helpful late in games. And then they picked up Ryan Fraser, who I think is one of the most exciting wingers in the past couple seasons of the Premier League. And while he hasn't been great so far for them, I think he'll eventually get more minutes. Maybe we'll see Jeff Hendrick drop into a more central role instead of out wide on the right. And then we'll see Fraser and Alan St. Maximin as the wingers. And I think that would be a good idea for them. But then also they signed Jamal Lewis, who I think was pretty decent for a team that got relegated last year and definitely looks like someone who has a higher ceiling than we might initially have seen from just his performances last year. So I'm excited to see what Newcastle do. I think they still need better quality center backs, but other than that, I think they're moving in the right direction.
Quick shout out to the Brewster to Sheffield deal that you mentioned. That's actually probably, and I mean this, like, I'm dead serious about this. That was probably the best deal that a selling club made this entire summer. Because if you look at the components of that deal, there's a buyback in there for Liverpool. So that's safe. But there's also a sell-on clause. So it's like 15%. And it was a pretty decent fee in like initial fee. So like that's going to go towards funding so much. No matter what happens, whether Brewster's a success or a failure, Liverpool won out. Because they could bring him back if they choose to. They could, because they'll have first option. If he gets sold on, they'll still make money from that. So I don't know. I think that just quietly, Liverpool did some really sneaky, really good stuff in the selling market.
Yeah, one last thing on Sheffield. So the beginning of their season's been very poor, but they're lucky that 2 other teams also haven't won a game, and that in 16th place they have a Manchester United team they could easily catch. All right, moving on here. That didn't excite Nick at all right there. Let's go to the worst transfer windows. Nick, I'll let you take it away.
I mean, it has to be United. And, the board will walk away and basically, beat everybody over the stick with we got in 5 players. We got Van de Beek, we got Cavani, Pelistri, and what's his name? From
Diallo.
Yeah. And like that for the board is what they would probably say is a good window. But I mean, when you look at how they started the season and when you look at how they ended the season, I remember in one of the previous pods saying, this summer was going to define like the top 4 for the next few years, in terms of how, the teams would approach it, how the teams were built for the long haul. And I think United massively dropped the ball. If you look into the specifics of this Jadon Sancho thing, absolute embarrassment for the club. They treated Dortmund terribly. They basically went through intermediaries and said Dortmund wanted us to go through intermediaries. And Dortmund came out and said no. So there are so many competing stories from both sides on what exactly happened with that deal. And the fact of the matter is, United were just too shy to stump up the money. And it came back and bit them. Because, I mean, next season, when teams are a little more settled and the finances aren't as shaky because of the pandemic, there are going to be some much better sides going in for Jadon Sancho. You think the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona, they'll be looking. So I think United, really, this was their chance to, secure their front line for the next 10 years. And they've really dropped the ball. Cavani, I think, will be okay, but I don't think he's going to really bed into the side well. I think there's too much of a mess there. But frankly, United needed a left back, they needed a central midfielder, they needed a center back, and most importantly, a right midfielder. And they got basically one of those. Van de Beek is an attacking midfielder for me. So I don't see him solving the defensive issues in the middle of the park. Telles will be probably one of the better left backs in the league, but again, they really should have gone and got Reguilon. Just a real failure from the board overall.
Hey, Cavani can always play center back. Don't worry.
I would say as well, Nick, that in addition to signing a left back and an attacking midfielder instead of going for what seemed to be more of the problem with a center back and a center midfielder, they also brought in Van de Beek for, I think it was between 35 and 40 million.
Yep.
He's 23. He has Champions League experience, but he is not a center midfielder. I mean, his best position is basically playing as close to the forwards as possible. He makes late runs into the box. He's a very creative player, but we already have very creative players in the midfield.
Yep.
We have Paul Pogba, who wants to play further forward, and we have Bruno, who plays further forward, and it makes no sense to play him any deeper. Whereas Pogba has some application as a deeper midfielder. We've seen him flourish in that role for France, playing next to like a true defensive midfielder. The problem is, other than Matic, they don't really have a true defensive midfielder because Scott McTominay is not that, and neither is Fred. What I think is the most ridiculous part of this is that we're in need of a right midfielder, right? We loan Taith Chong to Werder Bremen, which is good because it will get him minutes. However, he's the only right midfielder in the club. Greenwood is not a right midfielder. He didn't play there at all in any of the youth teams, any of the games I've watched him. In the U18s and the U23s, he never
He's a
played off
striker.
the right. He's a striker, and when he's not a striker, he plays behind the striker. What is even more ridiculous, adding on to this, is that because of the fee they paid for Van de Beek, they wouldn't be in contention to pay the fee that Arsenal paid for Partey. And Partey is an actual center midfielder, is not someone who wants to play as far forward as Bruno, Pogba, and Van de Beek, and we were not willing to offer Angel Gomez enough of a contract to get him to stay, which would have already given us depth at the attacking midfield position. So now we have another attacking midfielder who's in his mid-20s, which is pretty much the same as like Pogba and Bruno, someone who's creative and wants to play further forward. We didn't sign a defensive midfielder. We lost our best attacking midfield prospect who was about to come into the first team. We never gave him the minutes he wanted. We loaned out Taith Chong, and now we have a left back and a lone striker and an 18-year-old Uruguayan winger who nobody has any idea about, and another 18-year-old winger who has played, I believe, 30 minutes of senior football and won't even be coming until January. This is the most similar window that I've seen to the 14-15 summer window, and it gives me like nightmares. Because in that window, United signed Ander Herrera, Daley Blind, Radamel Falcao on loan. So there's your South American striker on loan. Your left back who's never played in the top 5 league, really. I mean, I think Telles played maybe like 10 or 15 games for Inter.
Yeah,
This
not much.
This is not looking good. This is basically the Van Gaal window. And we all know what happened to Van Gaal because the board signed players that he didn't want. The players that he did want and that we did sign, he played every single game. They got injured. And then the players that he didn't want to play had to play anyway. So we will truly see what happens this season with Ole, but it is well and truly apparent now that Ole has not been back because he came out, one of the journalists close to United came out and said that all of the players on Ole's short list were none of the players that got signed. Telles wasn't even on the list. So, yeah, that's indicative of what's going on at Manchester United. And I think that closes the case a little bit on which team in the Premier League had the worst window.
Yep.
For sake of difference, right? I'm going to go to the other side of Manchester and say that they had the worst transfer window.
It's
So
worth a shout.
the big question mark coming into this season, right, was were they going to be able to stand toe to toe with Liverpool? And the one thing that they really needed was a center back, right? So before the season started, they picked up Nathan Ake from Bournemouth for 50 mil. He hasn't seen anything. I don't think he was intended to play at all in the starting lineup. So then they really noticed that they needed somebody. So they picked up my captain, Ruben Dias. They stole him away from me last second. Stole him away. They stole him away from me for $75 million. I think this is in dollars. I should make sure I put that down. This is all in dollars.
Still an
75
overpayment.
Probably, but they picked up a 23-year-old Ruben Dias who's never played again. He's never played top-notch soccer or in his top-notch league. He's played for Portugal plenty of times. But other than that, he's also played well for Portugal, may I add. But other than that, he hasn't really had anything, and he's only 23 years old. And they paid $75 million for him. His first game with Man City was actually pretty decent. He didn't do horrible. But why did they wait so long to pull the trigger? This seemed like a panic signing to me, if you ask me.
Honestly, I agree with you on that. Because I mean, you look at the incomings, and the thing about bringing defenders into a Pep Guardiola system is that they take forever to bed in. Like they really do, because it's a complex system. So really, are we expecting these two guys to turn the whole thing around? That's a big ask. So I think automatically we're going to be looking at both of those two as disappointments. And Ferran Torres coming in, he is not a replacement for both David Silva and Leroy Sané. Just isn't. He's a very talented player.
He really is not either of those things.
You agree with me, because Sané was like a 20 goal contribution type player. David Silva at least 10. Ferran Torres
last season as a 33-year-old skinny little man, David Silva was a 20 goal contribution guy, which is crazy to say. And they signed one player to replace both of those people.
Who had 4 goals and 4 assists in La Liga last season? That's not enough.
In a terrible Valencia side, but
yes, but it's just
if you look at the mold of player that Sané is, he is a flying wing forward, and David Silva is a patient center of the park. Occasionally played off the left when in his earlier City career, but is a patient middle of the park player who controls the tempo, wants the ball, and is a great set piece taker. Ferran Torres is a right midfielder. He's neither of those things that I just said. He is a traditional 90s 4-4-2 right midfielder. And he's a very talented player, but he is neither of the things that I just said. So, yeah, that's all I'll say about that.
All right. So do you have any dishonorable mentions for the worst transfer window in England? Other than, the bottom teams, really, when you think about it, West Brom didn't really do nothing special.
Yeah, the likes of Fulham and West Brom, the relegation fodder, really.
Yeah, Fulham, I'm going to go right back down. Who saw that coming, right? But all right, let's move on. We got Spain next. We got La Liga. So I'll go to Seth first for your best transfer window in La Liga.